On Wednesday morning, my husband texted to cancel our 25th wedding anniversary trip to Europe. Plans changed, I'm not going. Our daughter knows and agrees that this is for the best. People like me are only fit to stay home and clean. Standing in the kitchen, I read the message 3 times. I wasn't shocked or upset. On the contrary, I smiled. I set down my teacup and went to the family iPad that he had carelessly unlocked. He was wrong. The battle had officially begun. This story begins with a text message, but it doesn't end where you think. Before we continue, drop a comment. What are you doing while you listen? Driving, cooking. Taking a quiet moment, I love hearing how these stories find you. Quick note, some details are fictionalized for storytelling. The lesson at the heart is what matters. At 7:12 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in December, my husband texted me to cancel our 25th anniversary trip to Europe. I was standing in our Mountain Ridge estate kitchen morning light, filtering through bay windows porcelain teacup halfway to my lips. The phone buzzed against granite countertop. I set down the cup with the careful precision I'd learned over 12 years of performing domestic tranquility. The message was brief. Plans have changed. You're not going on the trip. Someone like you only belongs at home cleaning up. At 53, I had spent the last 12 years as the elegant wife. Everyone pitied the former CFO, who gave up her corner office for granite countertops and charity luncheons. Brent Hartley. My husband of 25 years had always carried himself like a man who believed his Wharton MBA made him untouchable. He was wrong about many things. This morning would begin teaching him exactly how wrong. I read the text 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, because I wanted to memorize the exact wording for later. Someone like you, 25 years. He chose this morning, this moment, this particular cruelty. I should have felt shock, betrayal, the hot sting of humiliation that comes when you discover you've been playing checkers while your opponent played chess. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a large smile, nothing theatrical. Just a small upturn at the corners of my mouth, the kind of expression I used to wear when a quarterly report confirmed exactly what my projections had predicted 8 months prior. Because I had been predicting this. I had been a CFO once back when I was 32 and hungry and too ambitious to understand what marriage to a man like Brent would eventually cost. I knew how to read the signs when an entity was preparing to liquidate an asset. The careful distancing, the strategic meetings behind closed doors, the sudden interest in hiring external consultants who ask questions about valuation and division. I'd seen it coming since April. The phone buzzed again. Another text. Bryn knows. She agrees this is best. Our daughter, 20 years old studying business at UNC, apparently learning from her father that betrayal was just another negotiation tactic. Bryn Hartley had apparently been bribed with promises of a luxury apartment she didn't yet know was registered in someone else's name. I picked up my teacup. The porcelain was still warm. English breakfast, 2 sugars, no cream. The same way I'd made it every morning for 12 years while slowly suffocating in domestic performance. The tea tasted exactly the same as yesterday. That's when I noticed it. The family iPad left open on the granite countertop near the coffee maker. Brent's careless mistake in his rush to get to the office early to his 7:30 meeting with lawyers I wasn't supposed to know about. I walked over slowly, set down my teacup, touched the screen. Still logged into his email account. Did he really think a woman who once managed $40 million portfolios couldn't track the scent of her own disposal? The inbox was a masterclass in conspiracy. 3 weeks of messages between Brent and Saskia Redmond, 28, and Ambitious, the kind of executive assistant who had learned to weaponize efficiency and carefully applied lipstick. The subject lines alone told a story. Timeline revised. Document transfer complete. Be on board with apartment promise. I scrolled through them with the same methodical attention I used to apply to audit reports. From Brent, November 28th. Timing needs to be perfect. Make sure she's committed to packing before we spring this. Bryn is on board. I promised her the Riverside apartment deed. From Saskia, December 1st. The important documents are already in the safety deposit box. She won't think to check until it's too late. From Brent, December 5th. File the paperwork the day after she boards the flight. By the time she realizes what happened, the house will be in transition and the corporate accounts will be restructured. 3 weeks. They had been planning this for 3 weeks while I cooked his breakfast every morning. While I attended his company holiday party and smiled at Saskia across the conference room, champagne glass in hand, playing the role of the gracious wife who didn't notice her husband's assistant wore the same perfume he came home smelling like. While I wrapped Christmas presents for Bryn and listened to her talk about her business law class and never mentioned that her father was teaching her a different kind of lesson entirely. I scrolled further. Found the email from his attorney outlining the strategy get me to commit to travel cancel at the last minute, use my abandonment of household responsibilities as grounds for favorable asset division. Classic, transparent, brutally efficient, and 8 months too late. I closed the iPad with the same precise care I used to close quarterly reports, not out of rage, but because rage is what amateurs feel when they've been caught unprepared. I had not been caught unprepared. I walked to the bay windows and looked out at the December morning. The mountain ridge was dusted with early frost, the kind of picture-perfect landscape that appeared in real estate magazines, under headlines like Executive Sanctuary and Mountain Luxury Living. Brent thought this house was his leverage, his asset, his proof of success. He didn't know I'd moved it into an irrevocable trust 8 months ago. He didn't know about Simone. He didn't know I'd been quietly reactivating my CPA license while he assumed I was planning garden club fundraisers. He didn't know that every careless comment, every dismissive text, every strategic cruelty had been carefully documented and categorized in a file that now sat in a lawyer's office downtown, tagged with dates and amounts and legally admissible context. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd saved 8 months ago under a name only I would recognize, SW, estate planning. The call connected on the second ring. Simone, I said quietly, it's time. There was a pause, then her voice calm and professional, carrying the weight of 8 months of careful preparation. I'll file the paperwork within the hour. Everything we discussed, everything. Laurie, she said, and I heard something that might have been satisfaction or might have been respect. He never saw you coming, did he? I looked at my reflection in the bay window. 53 years old, former CFO, current housewife, soon to be something else entirely. No, I said. He never did. I ended the call and set the phone down next to the iPad, 2 pieces of technology that had just rewritten the narrative Brent thought he was controlling. Outside, frost melted under morning sun. Inside, the war had already begun. After hanging up with Simone, I immediately walked toward my private study. The clock was ticking and every second counted. 8 months ago, I'd sat in her downtown office watching April rain, streak the windows trying to articulate something I barely understood myself. He's changing, Simone. The way he looks at spreadsheets when he thinks I'm not watching. The way he started asking about the estate deed. Questions that sound casual but follow an audit pattern. She'd set down her coffee and leaned forward. You think he's liquidating? I think he's preparing to. Then we make sure the one asset he thinks he controls is the one thing he can never touch. She'd pulled out legal pad fountain pen already moving. Irrevocable trust. Hayes as beneficiary. It'll take me 3 weeks to structure it bulletproof, but once it's filed, any attempt to mortgage, sell, or refinance that house becomes legally void. Brent will contest it. Let him. The trust will be signed, notarized, and recorded before he knows it exists. By the time he figures out what you've done, Mountain Ridge Estate won't be marital property anymore. My son Hayes, 24, and working as a cybersecurity analyst, had inherited my methodical mind and none of his father's arrogance. When I'd called him that same week asking him to upgrade the security system, he'd understood exactly what I meant without explanation. Mom, he'd said quietly, how long do you think you have? 6 months, maybe 8. Then let's make sure you're ready. I opened the safe in my study, not the household safe Brent knew about, but the one I'd installed behind the false panel in April. Inside, 8 months of documentation. bank statements showing patterns of account restructuring, emails I'd recovered from deleted folders, photographs of Saskia leaving our house at hours that required explanations Brent never volunteered, a complete forensic map of our financial life, cross-referenced and dated. 8 months ago, I'd been a homemaker everyone pitied. Today, I was a CFO running the most important liquidation of my life. I pulled out the primary folder red tab labeled simply December. Everything inside had been prepared for this exact morning. Simone makes sure the emergency temporary restraining order on marital assets is delivered to the branch compliance officer at 9:30 exactly. We obtained the judge's signature yesterday afternoon based on the embezzlement risk documentation, so the bank must lock down his access the second they open. He'll panic. Good. Panic makes people sloppy. I ended the call and dialed Hayes. He answered before the first ring finished. It's happening. It's happening. Smart home lockdown. 3 o'clock this afternoon. I want him to get inside first. See what's gone. Then watch the system refuse to recognize him when he tries to leave and come back. Mom. There was something that might have been admiration in his voice. I've had remote access to that system since you asked me to upgrade the security in May. Say the word and his biometrics stop working. Gate, front door, garage, office, everything. 3 o'clock, I repeated, and Hayes the Bitcoin wallet. Already on it. He thinks he's got $200,000 in crypto sitting in cold storage as his escape fund. What he doesn't know is that I've been monitoring the wallet since June. The moment you give me the green light, I'll initiate a freeze through the exchange's fraud department. He'll spend 3 weeks proving he's the legitimate owner. Do it at noon. Consider it done. The third call went to my younger brother, Wade. 48, built like someone who'd spent 20 years as a detective before starting his own security firm. He answered on the first ring with his characteristic economy, "What do you need?" Moving crew at 11 o'clock. Everything on the list we prepared in September. I want it clinical, no damage, no rushed packing, everything documented with timestamps and photographs. Already en route. Lucille Thornton stationed across the street with her camera like we discussed. The neighborhood watch captain makes an excellent witness when you need someone credible. The file, tax evasion documentation compiled and cross-referenced, sitting in a manila envelope. I'll put it on his driver's seat at 4 o'clock when he stops for his meeting with Saskia at the Riverside Cafe. He won't be able to miss it. No contact. Never is. Just information exactly where he can't avoid it. Brent thought he was teaching me a lesson about my place. He had no idea he was standing on a chessboard where I'd already played 8 months ahead. I set my phone down on the granite counter and checked my watch, 8:59 a.m. Simone would file the freeze order in 31 minutes. Hayes would lock the smart home system at 3 o'clock and freeze the crypto wallet at noon. Wade's crew would arrive at 11. By the time Brent returned home from whatever celebratory lunch he was planning with Saskia, the house he thought he owned would be a museum of his own miscalculation. I walked to the bay windows and looked out at Mountain Ridge Estates grounds. December frost was melting under morning sun, revealing the landscape Brent believed represented his success. He'd purchased this house 14 years ago with a mortgage he'd called Our Investment. I decorated it, maintained it, hosted his business dinners in it, played the role of gracious wife in it, while my professional credentials gathered dust. And in April, I transferred it into an irrevocable trust with Hayes as beneficiary. Brent could no more sell this house than he could mortgage the moon. My phone buzzed. Text from Simone. Filing in 28 minutes. Are you ready? I looked at the message Brent had sent at 7:12 a.m. still displayed on my screen. Someone like you only belongs at home cleaning up. I typed back, my machine has been running for 47 minutes. He's already too late. Outside, Wade's van turned onto our street right on schedule. Inside, I poured myself a second cup of tea and waited for the first domino to fall. Wade's crew began unloading at exactly 11 a.m., but the call I'd been waiting for came earlier. At 10:02 a.m., Wade's voice came through. He just arrived at the bank. I stood at the bay window watching frost melt from the mountain ridge. And walking into First National now, confident stride, briefcase in hand. How far behind is he? Simone's freeze order executed at 9:30. He's 32 minutes too late. Precision matters. In corporate liquidations, timing is everything. Stay on the line, I said. Wade had positioned himself in the coffee shop across from the bank with clear sightline to the vault entrance. 20 years as a detective had taught him how to observe without being observed. He's at the vault entrance now, Wade murmured. Manager's pulling the box. Mom, his face just went white. I closed my eyes, allowing myself one moment of satisfaction. What's Finch saying? Can't hear exact words, but Brent's getting louder. Let me get closer. Rustling. Then Brent's voice tight with controlled fury. What do you mean it's empty? I was here 3 days ago. Mr. Gerald Finch, who'd managed the Hartley accounts for 15 years, had the uncomfortable task of explaining to a furious client why the court's timeline had beaten his by exactly 32 minutes. His response was apologetic but firm. I'm sorry, Mr. Hartley, but a court-ordered asset freeze was executed at 9:30 this morning. The contents were secured 20 minutes before you arrived. I received the order directly from Judge Morrison's chambers. This is impossible. Who filed this? The documentation lists Mrs. Hartley's legal counsel, Simone Whitfield. The order was signed at 9:27 a.m. Brent had spent 8 months planning to liquidate assets he thought he controlled. I'd spent 8 months ensuring those assets would be the one thing he could never touch. Wade, how's he handling it? Poorly, demanding to speak to managers, threatening legal action. Classic panic response. Let me know when he leaves. I ended the call and looked at the grandfather clock, 10:18 a.m. Everything was proceeding exactly on schedule. The moving van arrived at 11 a.m. with military precision. Wade's security firm specialized in high-value asset relocation, the kind where every item needed documentation that would satisfy insurance auditors and forensic accountants. I met them at the front door with my inventory file. Each piece gets photographed, cataloged, and matched to the original purchase receipt, I said to the crew chief. I want documentation that would pass an IRS audit. He nodded. This wasn't his first corporate dissolution. Wade arrived 10 minutes later. Mom walked me through the priority list. I led him to the dining room. Start with the Henriton furniture set. I purchased it in 1998 with my signing bonus from Sterling Capital pre-marriage funds. Original receipt is tab-marked in Section 3. The artwork, every piece on the west wall. Wilmington Art Fair, 2003. Receipts, certificates of authenticity, independent appraisals, all filed chronologically. We moved through the house systematically. The Waterford crystal from my grandmother, the first edition book collection, the antique writing desk I'd restored. 25 years of marriage, and Brent never once asked why I kept every purchase receipt filed chronologically in fireproof storage. By noon, the operation was in full flow. 6 crew members in coordinated pairs, each item wrapped, photographed, documented. Wade supervised with the same attention he'd once applied to evidence chains. That's when I noticed Mrs. Lucille Thornton. She stood on her porch 2 houses down, iPhone raised, recording everything. 67 sharp-eyed, armed with technology, she wielded like an investigative journalist. Lucille missed absolutely nothing that happened on Mountain Ridge Drive. I walked across the street. Lucille. She lowered the phone slightly but kept recording. Laurie, should I be worried? Not at all. Asset preservation during marital dissolution. Everything you're seeing is legal, documented, and my property by purchase date. She studied me carefully. You're not angry. You're not crying. You're treating this like a corporate liquidation. Because that's exactly what it is, Lucille. Asset preservation during hostile dissolution. I learned this 25 years ago when I was CFO at Sterling Capital. I'm just applying the same principles. Your husband knows about this. He will. She was quiet. Then, do you need anything, witness statements? Your recording will be sufficient. Timestamp everything. If anyone asks, you'll confirm that nothing was damaged, nothing was rushed, and every item removed belonged to me by clear legal documentation. Laurie, are you all right? I glanced at my watch, 2:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, Hayes would execute the smart home lockdown protocol. The estate would be legally emptied, digitally sealed, and Brent would return from lunch to find every access point displaying a message he'd never imagined seeing. Perfectly fine, Lucille, just preserving my assets. She nodded slowly. I've lived on this street for 43 years. I've seen 3 divorces, 2 foreclosures, 1 embezzlement case. I've never seen anyone handle it like this. That's because most people don't spend 8 months preparing. Wade appeared at my elbow. Mom, final load is secured. We're clear by 2:54, 6 minutes ahead of schedule. Good. You have the delivery? He patted his jacket. Manila envelope. Tax evasion documentation cross-referenced. I'll plant it in his Mercedes at Sterling Capitol parking lot at 4 p.m., exactly when he stops between lunch with Saskia and whatever meeting he thinks he's running. No property damage. Never is, just information exactly where he can't avoid it. I looked back at Mountain Ridge Estate. The house was still standing, still beautiful, still legally mine, through the trust Hayes now held. But it was empty of everything that represented my life before Brent decided I was disposable. Right on the dot at 3 o'clock, my phone rang in the quiet stripped house. It was Hayes calling from his apartment across town, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone about to execute code that had been waiting in the system for months. Ready to lock him out, Mom? Do it. I heard keystrokes through the phone. Then silence. Then Hayes' voice calm and professional. Every security upgrade I installed in May. Those weren't upgrades, they were override protocols. He's been locked out of his own system for 7 months without knowing it. He thought he controlled the technology. He thought wrong. The system's been answering to me since the day I installed it. Front gate biometrics revoked. Front door touchscreen revoked. Garage door access revoked. Office security panel revoked. Every entry point now displays the same legal notice. What does it say? Access restricted per court order filed December 11th, 2026. Contact legal counsel Simone Whitfield for property access inquiries. Access restricted per court order filed December 11th, 2024. Any attempted breach will be logged and reported to authorities. Brent's technologically advanced fortress had instantly turned into his prison, stripped of his authority by the systems he thought he owned. Mom, Hayes said, and there was something different in his voice now, not satisfaction, but something closer to concern. Are you okay? I know this is your house too. It was my house, I corrected. Now it's yours held in trust. I'm preserving what I built and removing what he assumed belonged to him. There's a difference. When this is over, we'll talk about what happens to the house. Today, we're just making sure he can't weaponize it against me. Understood. Lockdown is complete. Every system is live. He's officially locked out. I ended the call and checked my watch 3:09 p.m. Wade's text came through at 3:47 p.m. en route to Sterling Capitol, ETA 13 minutes. The next call came at exactly 4 p.m. I'm at his car now, Wade said, voice low and professional. Silver Mercedes reserved executive spot. The windows cracked about 2 inches, he always does that, thinking it prevents interior heat buildup. Anyone around? 2 people in the parking lot, both 50 yards away, turned their backs. Security cameras will show me walking past, but angles are wrong to show what I'm doing. The envelope goes through clean. I heard the soft sound of paper sliding through a narrow gap. Done. Landed on the driver's seat right where he can't miss it when he gets in. What's visible from outside? Nothing. Manila envelope standard legal size, no markings. Could be anything. But the moment he opens it, he'll see the cover page, Confidential Tax Documentation Offshore Income Reporting Violations, 2018 to 2025. 7 years of unreported offshore income cross-referenced with the accounts Simone froze this morning. Exactly. And here's the beautiful part. Nobody will see me deliver it, but plenty of security cameras will show him finding it. His own paranoia will do the rest. He'll suspect everyone at Sterling Capitol, someone in accounting, someone in law, someone who had access to his files and decided to become a whistleblower. What's more devastating than discovering your assets are frozen? Discovering that the evidence of your crimes has been delivered by someone who knows your daily patterns better than you know them yourself. Nobody touched his car, I said carefully. You just placed the truth exactly where he couldn't avoid it. No property damage, no forced entry, no confrontation, just information delivered to its proper recipient. How long until he finds it? Probably within the hour. He and Saskia should be finishing their celebration lunch about now. They've been at Chez Laurent since noon. Wade had a surveillance contact confirm it. The kind of lunch where you order expensive wine because you think you're about to be very rich. Let me know when he leaves the restaurant. Will do. I'm clear of the parking lot. No one noticed me. I walked to the bay window one last time, looking at Mountain Ridge Estate from the inside. The house was empty now. Every piece of furniture I'd purchased with my own money was in secure storage. Every personal item Brent had assumed belonged to him through marriage was documented, cataloged, and protected by legal paperwork that would take him months to contest. The December sun was setting earlier now, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. This morning, I'd stood here with a teacup reading a text message designed to humiliate me. Tonight, Brent would stand in the same spot and discover he'd humiliated himself. My phone buzzed Wade. He's leaving Chez Laurent now, 4:17 p.m. Saskia's following in her sedan. Looks like she's planning to see the house. How long until they arrive? 23 minutes, depending on traffic. Mrs. Thornton's still positioned across the street with her iPhone. She asked if she should keep recording. Tell her yes. I want documentation of the exact moment he realizes what's happened. And Saskia. Her too. I want her face on camera when she understands exactly what kind of mistake she made. Wade's voice carried something that might have been admiration. Mom, you're not just winning this. You're documenting the victory. Evidence matters, Wade. Always has. I ended the call and looked at my watch, 4:19 p.m. Brent and Saskia would arrive at 4:40 p.m. The front door touchscreen would be the first message. The emptied interior would be the second. And Mrs. Thornton, still positioned with her iPhone across the street, would document the third Saskia's face when she understood exactly what kind of mistake she'd made. I picked up my keys and walked toward the garage. It was time to let Brent discover his new reality alone. I was 30 miles away when Mrs. Thornton called at 5:28 p.m., her voice carrying the breathless excitement of someone who just captured something extraordinary on camera. Laurie, dear, they're here. I pulled into a rest stop off Highway 26, engine still running. Both of them. His Mercedes just turned into the driveway. She's parking on the street, probably doesn't want to look presumptuous. Oh, he's getting out now, walking toward the front door like he owns the place. He thinks he does, I said quietly. Keep the phone on. Tell me everything you see. I heard the rustle of Mrs. Thornton adjusting her position, the faint click of her iPhone zooming in. He's at the door now, trying his fingerprint. Oh my, the screen just flashed red. He's trying again and again. Laurie, his hands are shaking. What does the screen say, Lucille? Can you zoom in? I need to see his face when he reads it. Hold on, Yes, I can read it now. It says, access for Brent Hartley suspended due to breach of family financial security protocols. Contact legal counsel for property access inquiries. He's backing away from the door like it burned him. The smart home technology Brent had considered proof of his sophistication was now broadcasting his complete powerlessness. Every biometric scan publicly denied him access while displaying the reason in language that sounded like corporate termination. He's calling someone now, Mrs. Thornton continued. Probably you. Are you going to answer? Not yet. What else is he doing? Trying the garage door panel, same red denial screen. Now he's walking around the side of the house. I think he's checking the back entrance. I waited, listening to Mrs. Thornton's narration like a play-by-play of a game I'd already won. Heard her breathing the ambient sound of early evening in a residential neighborhood, the distant sound of Brent's voice rising in frustration. He's back at the front door, pressing buttons like the system made a mistake. But Laurie, her voice dropped lower, almost reverent. The screen keeps flashing that same message. Breach of family financial security protocols. Over and over, like the house is testifying against him. 25 years I'd watched him program that door system, bragging to dinner guests about military-grade security fingerprint recognition, facial scanning technology that cost more than most people's cars. Never once considering who actually installed it. Never once asking Hayes what those security upgrades actually did. He's looking through the windows now, Mrs. Thornton said. Into the living room, his face. Laurie? I wish you could see this. He's just standing there with his mouth open. The furniture's gone. Everything's gone. It looks like a house that's been foreclosed. No, that's not quite right. It looks like a house that's been surgically emptied. Nothing damaged, nothing broken, just absent. That's exactly what it is. Surgical removal of my assets from his presumed territory. Oh, wait, another car's pulling up. Silver sedan. This must be Saskia. I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene I couldn't see, but had orchestrated completely. She's getting out, walking toward him. Confident stride, my goodness, she's young. 28, you said. 28 and ambitious. Well, she's about to learn something about ambition. She's at the window now, peering inside, her hands on the glass. Laurie, you should see her face. Lucille, describe it exactly. Tell me what you see. There was a pause. When Mrs. Thornton spoke again, her voice carried something between pity and satisfaction. She just put both hands on the window. Her face, it's not angry. It's not confusing. She looks terrified, like someone who just realized they bet everything on the wrong horse. She's turning to Brent now, saying something I can't hear, but her body language. She's backing away from him. Through Mrs. Thornton's iPhone screen, I watch Saskia discover what every ambitious climber eventually learns. When you tie your future to someone else's power, you'd better verify they actually own the rope. What's Brent doing? Talking fast, gesturing at the house, at his phone, back at the house. Trying to explain, I think. But Saskia's face isn't changing. She's not buying whatever he's selling. She's recalculating. That's exactly what it looks like. Cold calculation. She's looking at him the way someone looks at a stock that just crashed, trying to figure out if it's worth holding or if she should cut her losses. Saskia Redmond had spent 3 weeks conspiring to help Brent liquidate his wife. She'd sent careful emails coordinating timeline and strategy, probably imagining herself moving into Mountain Ridge Estate as the new Mrs. Hartley, trading her executive assistant desk for charity luncheons and decorator consultations. Instead, she was staring through a window at empty rooms, watching her investment evaporate. Laurie, Mrs. Thornton said quietly, for the first time I'm seeing fear in her eyes. Not ambition anymore. Fear. Good. She's walking back to her car now. Fast walk. Not quite running, but close. Brent's following her, still talking, but she's not stopping. Is she leaving? Car door's open. She's sitting in the driver's seat, but she hasn't started the engine yet. Just sitting there. Brent's at her window, knocking. She's shaking her head. He looks... Laurie. He looks desperate. Desperation was the natural result of discovering that the timeline you thought you controlled had been controlled by someone else all along. Mrs. Thornton's voice dropped to a whisper. She's looking at him now, at Brent and Laurie. The expression on her face isn't love or loyalty or even disappointment. It's the calculating look of someone pricing their exit strategy. Through the phone, I heard Brent's voice, rising, not angry, yet still confused, still certain this was a mistake he could fix with the right phone call. He had no idea that confusion would curdle into panic, then rage, then the desperate recognition that the woman standing beside him was already planning her defection. Laurie, your phone must be ringing off the hook. He's tried calling someone at least 6 times in the past few minutes. I glanced at my phone screen. 12 missed calls, all from Brent. Let him call, I said. I'll answer when I'm ready. Right now, I want him to stand outside that house and feel exactly what I felt this morning when he told me someone like me only belongs at home cleaning up. What are you going to say when you finally answer? I put the car in drive and pulled back onto the highway. I'm going to let him explain himself first, I said, and then I'm going to tell him the truth. I checked into Harborview Inn at 5:47 p.m., a small Wilmington waterfront hotel where nobody would think to look for a housewife in the middle of a divorce. My phone had been ringing for 6 minutes straight when I finally answered Brent's 17th call at exactly 6 p.m. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Brent. His voice came through in a rush, words tumbling over each other. What the hell did you do to the house, Laurie? The door won't open. Everything is gone. This is theft, grand theft, and I'm calling the police. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed looking out at the harbor. Are you finished? Finished. You took my furniture, my artwork, you locked me out of my own house. Your house? Yes, my house. Interesting. Because the trust documentation filed in April shows the house belongs to Hayes. It has been 8 months. Silence. The kind that comes when someone's narrative collapses mid-sentence. That's not possible. You can't just establish an irrevocable trust I did. Simone Whitfield handled the filing. It's been public record since April 23rd. You had no right. I had every right. The house was purchased with joint funds, which means I had equal authority to place it in trust. His breathing was heavy, ragged. The furniture, the artwork, my property. Pre-marriage purchases documented with receipts. Every item photographed, inventoried, matched to original purchase documentation. This is insane. You're acting insane. Am I acting like someone who's been watching her husband plan her liquidation for 3 weeks while he thought she was too stupid to notice? Another silence. I don't know what you think you know. I know about the iPad you left on the counter. I know about the emails between you and Saskia. The timeline tricked me into packing early cancel the trip file while I'm confused. The apartment you promised Bryn. The vault at First National. Should I continue or... You went through my email. You left it open in the house where I live, where I cooked your breakfast every morning while you conspired to make me homeless. His voice shifted, calculating now. None of that justifies what you did. You committed theft. You locked me out of my property. I'm filing charges tonight. I stood up, walked to the window. Harbor lights reflected on dark water. Are you threatening your housewife, Brent? Or are you threatening the person who's been auditing Sterling Capital's shadow books for the past 8 months? Complete silence, the sound of every defense crumbling at once. What are you talking about? His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm talking about offshore accounts, unreported income, client funds moved through personal routing numbers, 7 years of embezzlement documentation currently sitting in a very secure location. You're bluffing. Am I check your car, Brent? Driver's seat, manila envelope. Someone left you a preview. I heard rustling, footsteps, a car door opening, then nothing. Then, where did you get this? I've been a CFO, Brent. I know how to read financial statements. I know how to follow money trails. I know exactly what you've been doing at Sterling Capital, and I know exactly how much prison time it's worth. He hung up. I listened to the dial tone for 3 seconds, then set the phone on the small hotel desk. This was only the first call. An hour later, the text started. Not from Brent, from Bryn. 7:04 p.m. Mom, this is so selfish. Dad said you're just jealous of Saskia and trying to ruin everything because you can't handle that he's moved on. You're tearing this family apart. I read it twice. The phone buzzed again. You're embarrassing yourself and embarrassing me. Everyone at UNC knows what you did. I can't believe you're doing this to Dad when he's always taken care of us. Another buzz. He said you stole everything from the house. That's actual theft, Mom. You could go to jail. Is that what you want? I had taught her to read, to drive, to interview for college. I had sat through every parent-teacher conference, every dance recital, every late-night conversation about boys and grades and choosing the right major. And in 8 text messages, she'd decided I was the villain in a story her father had just started writing. The messages kept coming. Saskia said you're trying to frame Dad for something he didn't do. She said you're making up lies because you can't accept that he doesn't love you anymore. I'm not taking sides, but Dad has always been the one who paid for everything. You just stayed home. This seems really ungrateful. Can you just apologize and give everything back? This is so embarrassing for me at school. 20 years. I had raised her for 20 years, and she believed I was capable of petty jealousy, of small-minded revenge, of tearing apart a family out of wounded pride. I turned the phone face down on the desk. The pain was real sharper than I'd anticipated, deeper than I'd planned for. Not the anger or betrayal from Brent that I'd processed months ago, but this, my daughter. The person I'd built my entire domestic life around, choosing his narrative over 20 years of evidence. I didn't cry. I noted it down in the small leather journal I kept for tracking emotional responses. 7:23 p.m. Bryn's texts. First genuine wound of the day. Price of truth arriving in the wrong order. I looked out at Wilmington Harbor. The pain was real, but I couldn't afford to let it derail what came next. By morning, Brent would file police reports, contact his lawyer, and call Bryn again to reinforce his narrative. I needed to be ready with documentation, witnesses, and legal verification that everything I'd done was completely within bounds of the law. Deputy Ronan Kelly would receive Brent's theft complaint at the Buncombe County Sheriff's Department by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'd be ready. I slept 4 hours, woke at dawn, and checked my phone. No new messages from Bryn. 3 more from Brent, increasingly desperate, increasingly incoherent. I drove back to Asheville through Saturday morning mountain fog, arriving at Magnolia Cafe at 8:47 a.m. to find Deputy Kelly's patrol car already waiting in the parking lot. Deputy Ronan Kelly was 41 former military police with the kind of methodical demeanor that came from years of separating facts from emotional noise. He'd handled the domestic disputes on Mountain Ridge Drive for the past 6 years. 2 divorces, 1 custody battle, 3 noise complaints. He knew the neighborhood. He stepped out of his patrol car as I parked. Mrs. Hartley. Deputy Kelly. I assume Brent filed his report. Last night, 11:47 p.m., Mr. Hartley filed a formal complaint claiming grand theft of property, illegal lockout, and asset concealment. He pulled out a small notepad. He was quite insistent that we investigate immediately. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd prepared in April, updated Thursday, triple-checked Friday. Everything's in this folder, Deputy. Trust documents from April establishing Hayes as a state beneficiary. Court freeze order filed Thursday morning at 9:27 a.m. Inventory lists with purchase receipts dating back to 1998. Bonded storage facility contract with timestamp and witness signatures. He took the folder, opened it on the hood of his patrol car. The morning sun was burning through the fog, now casting long shadows across the parking lot. I watched him read, page by page, trust document signed, notarized, court-stamped, freeze order, Judge Morrison's signature is clear and official, inventory lists, photographs matched to receipts, matched to storage manifests. He turned each page with the same careful attention, checking signatures, verifying dates. Finally, he looked up. How long have you been preparing this, Mrs. Hartley? 8 months. He nodded slowly. This level of documentation doesn't happen overnight. No, it doesn't. He closed the folder, handed it back. I don't see a crime here, ma'am. Everything appears to be in order. The trust is legal. The freeze order is properly executed. The property you removed is documented as premarital assets. Mr. Hartley's complaint doesn't have legal standing. You'll need to tell him that. I will. But Mrs. Hartley... He paused, choosing words carefully. He's not going to accept it easily. Men like Mr. Hartley, when they're used to being in control, they don't handle loss well. I know. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Harborview Inn in Wilmington. Nobody knows I'm there. He nodded again. Keep it that way, and keep your phone charged. If he escalates, call immediately. Deputy Kelly had just verified what I'd known for 8 months. Preparation beats, panic documentation beats, desperation and legal precision beats, loud accusations every single time. I walked into Magnolia Cafe at 9:15 a.m. The Saturday morning crowd was thick retirees reading newspapers, young families with restless children, weekend regulars who treated Pete's coffee like sacrament. The smell of bacon and fresh-baked bread filled the air, mixing with conversation that dropped to murmurs as I entered. I took a corner booth, ordered scrambled eggs and wheat toast. The table was clean, the vinyl seat cracked in 3 places from years of use. Through the window, I could see Deputy Kelly's patrol car pulling out of the parking lot. The conversations around me shifted gradually, carefully, not directly addressing me, but not hiding the subject either. Heard there was some trouble up at the Hartley place yesterday. Someone said from 2 booths over. Male voice, older. Moving trucks, police calls. Shame when marriages fall apart like that. Well, you know what they say about Brent Hartley. A woman's voice this time. All that money from sterling capital, but he never did have much sense about priorities. I've known Laurie Hartley for 12 years, another voice younger female, probably late 30s. She organized the elementary school book fair 3 years running. I volunteered for every fundraiser. That's not the behavior of someone vindictive. My wife says she saw the assistant, Saskia, coming out of Brent's office at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Said it didn't look like overtime paperwork. I kept my eyes on my coffee, listening to my reputation being negotiated in real time. Not everyone was sympathetic. One voicemail, probably someone from Brent's business circle, suggested I was overreacting to a midlife crisis. Another implied I should have been more understanding, more flexible, more willing to accept that marriages evolve. But the majority leaned the other way. Brent had spent 25 years buying respect with expensive dinners and country club memberships. I'd spent 12 years earning it with consistency and presence. Only one of those investments holds value when the account comes due. Pete Dalton appeared at my table with a fresh coffee pot. "Refill, please." He poured slowly, deliberately, then set the pot down and looked at me with the same straightforward honesty he'd probably learned in 20 years of Navy galley service. "This town knows you better than he thinks Laurie. Some people spend decades building goodwill. Others spend it all in one afternoon." He picked up the pot again. "Breakfast is on me today." "Pete, I don't have to do anything. I want to. There's a difference." He walked back to the counter, leaving me with a full cup of coffee and the quiet realization that I wasn't as alone as Brent probably assumed. I finished my breakfast slowly, listening to the cafe's rhythm. Conversations moved on to other topics: holiday shopping, grandchildren, the weather forecast predicting snow next week. But I'd heard what mattered. When I stood to leave, 3 people nodded at me. Small gestures. But in a town this size, small gestures meant everything. I walked out into the late morning sun, checking my phone. No new messages. Tomorrow was Sunday. The Asheville City Market, half the town congregated there to see and be seen, to discuss business over organic vegetables and negotiate social hierarchies. Brent attended every Sunday, religiously viewing it as essential networking. So would Hayes. And Mrs. Thornton, armed with her iPhone, never missed a market day. I didn't know it yet, but tomorrow's market would provide the single piece of evidence that would transform everything from civil dispute to criminal liability. Sunday morning, I woke to Wilmington Harbor light and the knowledge that everything would change today. Hayes called at 9:47 a.m. from the Asheville City Market, with 4 words that told me his plan was already in motion. "Mom, he's here too." "Where are you positioned?" "Near the organic produce stands. Right where he networks with Sterling Capital clients every Sunday morning. I can see him across the market square with Saskia. He hasn't spotted me yet." "Hayes, I know what I'm doing, Mom. We discussed this. Let him see me." I heard market noise through the phone conversations, vendors calling prices the ambient sound of a Sunday crowd. There are cameras, 3 security cameras with clear sightlines. Mrs. Thornton's positioned at the coffee stand with her iPhone, and about 40 people who know both of us. "Keep your hands down." "That's the plan." Then, "He's seen me. Here he comes." I listened through the phone as my son executed a calculated sacrifice. Brent's voice, first distant but carrying, "You Hayes, what the hell are you doing here?" Hayes's voice, calm and clear, "Shopping, Dad, same as everyone else." "Don't you dare. You have no right to show your face in public after what you did." "What did? I helped Mom protect her assets. Everything was legal." Then sounds I recognized too well: rapid footsteps, a sudden commotion, gasps from nearby witnesses. Brent's voice louder now, shouting, "You turned her against me. You and your mother poisoning her mind with lies about me and Saskia. You're a disgrace to this family." A woman's voice, shocked, "Someone should call security." Hayes still perfectly calm. "Dad, you're making a scene. There are cameras. Your clients are watching." "I don't care who's watching. You helped her steal my house, lock me out of my own property." "Your house. It's been in trust for 8 months. You just didn't bother to check public records." More gasps. Then Mrs. Thornton's voice close to the phone. "Hayes, I'm recording everything. Security's coming." My son had just taken a public blow, not because he couldn't defend himself, but because he understood what I'd known for 8 months. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon is letting your enemy's rage destroy them on camera. Mrs. Thornton's voice came through my phone seconds later, slightly breathless. "Laurie, I'm recording everything. He just grabbed Hayes by the collar in front of half the Sterling Capital executive team. Shook him like a rag doll. Your son didn't raise a hand. Just stood there taking it while everyone watched." "Is Hayes hurt?" "No, he's fine. Security pulled Brent off. But Laurie, this is career suicide. Everyone saw it. Daniel Prescott from the board of directors, Jennifer March from legal, 3 of Brent's own clients, and my phone caught every second. Send me the video. Already uploading to the cloud. And Laurie, your son." He knew exactly what he was doing. He positioned himself where Brent couldn't miss him, kept his voice calm, his hands down. This wasn't an accident. This was strategy. I know. The video arrived 14 minutes later. 2 minutes and 47 seconds of Brent Hartley destroying his professional reputation in front of witnesses who controlled his career. I watched it 3 times, then forwarded it to Simone with a single line, "Document for court file." 3 hours later, I was in North Carolina. The drive to Chapel Hill took 2.5 hours through mountain roads that gave way to Piedmont Plains. I arrived at UNC campus at 2:30 p.m., parked beside Bryn's dorm building in visitor parking, and waited. She appeared at 2:47 p.m., walking from the library with her backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in hand. She didn't see my car until she was 10 feet away. Then she stopped. I rolled down the window, said nothing, just extended the manila folder through the opening. "Mom, I don't understand why you're here. I said everything I needed to say in my texts." I kept the folder extended, waited. She took it slowly, suspiciously. I opened it standing there on the pavement. Inside, one document. Legal-sized paper, professionally printed. Property deed for the Riverside luxury apartment, the one Brent had promised her as reward for choosing his side. I watched her eyes scan the first page, then the second, then back to the first as if hoping she'd misread something. This is the Riverside apartment deed." Her voice was small, uncertain. "But it says Dad and Saskia, joint ownership, registered August 2025. She looked up at me, confusion transforming into the first edge of understanding. "Where's my name?" Her voice broke slightly. "Mom, where's my name?" I said nothing, just reached over and opened the passenger door, a gesture that was simultaneously an invitation and an acknowledgement that I'd driven 2.5 hours to deliver the truth in the form most people her age understood legal documentation they could Google to verify. 20 years of motherhood condensed into a manila folder and a silent car door opening. I had given her everything I knew how to give, and she'd chosen to believe I was capable of petty jealousy. The deed was my final gift of truth. She didn't get in the car, just stood there holding the papers, reading them again and again as if repetition would change the words. He said the apartment was mine. He said it was going to be my graduation present. He said you were just jealous that he was moving on with Saskia. I still said nothing. "The texts I sent you Friday." She looked up, eyes filling. "Mom, I put the car in gear. Some apologies need to marinate in full understanding before they mean anything. Some lessons only penetrate when delivered in silence." I pulled out of the parking space, slowly watching her in the rearview mirror. She stood on the pavement, the deed papers fluttering in her hands as a gust of wind tried to take them. She looked up. Our eyes met for 3 seconds, and I saw the exact moment understanding replaced certainty. The moment she realized her cruel texts from Friday night had been based on her father's carefully constructed fiction. I drove away, leaving her with the truth she'd refused to hear when it came from my voice. But the truth about Brent's deceptions ran deeper than broken promises to our daughter. It ran through 7 years of corporate books I'd been quietly auditing, and it led directly to Lawrence Garrison's office at Sterling Capital, where Monday morning would bring a reckoning that made lost apartments and public market scenes look like preliminary moves in a much longer game. Lawrence called at 8:42 a.m. with news delivered in his characteristic measured tone. "I've just suspended your husband pending termination." Lawrence Garrison, 57, had been Sterling Capital's chief compliance officer for 12 years, the kind of executive who'd built his career on finding patterns other people missed. His office was 2 floors above Brent's, and his authority extended to anyone whose behavior posed legal liability to the firm. On what grounds, I asked, though I suspected I already knew. I've been receiving anonymous audit reports for 6 months, Mrs. Hartley. Forensic-level analysis of accounts your husband thought were buried deep enough. The detail is extraordinary. Someone with CFO-level expertise has been documenting systematic embezzlement, offshore transfers, falsified expense reports. The total exceeds $800,000. I pulled into a rest stop, put the car in park. What did he say when you confronted him? He demanded to know who sent them, asked if I'd hired someone to spy on him. I told him the reports were dated, notarized, cross-referenced with bank statements I'd independently verified. Then I told him his suspension was effective immediately. How did he respond? He threatened legal action, said whoever sent those reports was manufacturing evidence. Then security escorted him out. His corporate email access keycard company vehicle all revoked as of 8:30 this morning. How long had I been sending those reports to Lawrence? 6 months of forensic documentation, each one signed with the same careful anonymity, long enough that he'd built a termination case no corporate lawyer could challenge. Mrs. Hartley, Lawrence said carefully, these reports, whoever compiled them understands your husband's numbers better than he does. The analysis shows someone who knows exactly where to look and precisely how to document what they find. There was a pause, a deliberate one. I appreciate the call, Lawrence. Of course. I thought you should know. And Mrs. Hartley, the Sunday market incident was captured on multiple cameras. It's not helping his case. I ended the call and sat in the rest stop parking lot watching morning traffic flow past. 6 months of anonymous reports, $800,000 in documented theft, 1 public assault captured on video. The machine was running exactly as designed. That afternoon, I drove to the secure storage warehouse where Wade's crew had relocated my property. Climate-controlled unit keycard access, 24-hour security. I needed to inventory some financial documents for Simone. I found the insurance policy at 2:47 p.m., filed in a box marked Household Miscellaneous 2024. The document was professionally printed, legally notarized, dated 18 months ago. Title, Incapacity Benefit Transfer Provision, Supplemental Life Insurance Rider. I read it standing there in the fluorescent-lit storage unit, my hands beginning to shake by the second paragraph. Policyholder, Brent M. Hartley. Beneficiary Incapacity Clause. In the event Laurie A. Hartley is declared medically or legally incapacitated, all assets held in her name, including but not limited to trusts, real property investment accounts, and retirement funds, shall transfer to policyholder's sole management authority for proper stewardship and protection. I read it again, then a third time. 18 months. He'd purchased this 18 months ago, not just planning to leave me, but constructing a legal framework to have me declared incompetent. The document continued with clinical precision definitions of incapacity, medical professional determination of cognitive impairment, legal conservatorship proceedings, or court-ordered competency evaluation. Transfer mechanisms, automatic authority vesting upon presentation of medical certification or court order, and management scope, full discretionary control, including but not limited to sale, transfer, or liquidation of assets. This wasn't divorce strategy. This was civil erasure. He wanted legal authority to manage me like I was property that needed a conservator. I sat down on the cold concrete floor of that storage unit not from fear, but because my legs had stopped working correctly. For the first time since this started, I understood the actual danger I'd been in. Brent hadn't been planning to fight me for assets in divorce court. He'd been planning to eliminate my legal personhood entirely. 1 doctor's signature, 1. Psychiatric evaluation, 1 court order, and I would have become a ward under his permanent management. Every dismissive comment about my intelligence suddenly took on a different meaning. Every suggestion that I was overreacting or emotional or not thinking clearly looked like groundwork for competency challenges. For the first time, I understood he didn't want me gone. He wanted me erased. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and photographed every page, 23 pages total. Legal definitions, transfer protocols, management authorities. I sent them to Simone with a single message: emergency. Call immediately. Her response came back in 14 seconds. Jesus Christ, where did you find this? Storage unit, filed with household paperwork. This is beyond divorce tactics, Laurie. I need to research conservatorship law immediately. He was building a legal cage. I know. How far do you think he would have gone to execute this? That was the question I'd been asking myself since finding the document. Would he have engineered an accident that left me cognitively impaired? Manufactured medical evidence of declining mental capacity? Convinced a doctor I was suffering from delusional paranoia? The policy language suggested he'd consulted experts about legal thresholds for incapacitation. This wasn't theoretical planning. This was operational preparation. I was still sitting on that concrete floor document, pages spread around me like evidence at a crime scene, when my phone rang again. Lawrence. Mrs. Hartley, I need to meet with you this evening. My private residence, not the office. There are things we should discuss that can't be covered over corporate lines. What kind of things? The kind where I tell you that I've known for 4 months exactly who's been sending me those audit reports, and we discuss what happens next. He knew. He'd known all along. I drove to Lawrence's residence at 6:47 p.m., following GPS directions, to a quiet street lined with oak trees and houses that spoke of old Asheville money, the kind earned through consistency rather than speculation. Lawrence Garrison's study looked exactly like my father's had 30 years ago: floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs worn soft by decades of use, and photographs documenting friendships that predated my existence. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon without asking if I drank. Your father and I were roommates at Duke in 1982. He said, handing me a glass. That's him on the left. The photograph on his desk showed 2 young men in business school attire, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning with the confidence of people who believed the world made sense if you studied it hard enough. My father is 23, 8 years before I was born, 15 years before the car accident that killed him when I was 7. He taught me financial analysis the way a master craftsman teaches woodworking. Lawrence continued. Precision, integrity, documentation that could survive any audit. He used to say that numbers tell the truth if you know their language. I sipped the bourbon, it burned going down. When I received the first anonymous report 6 months ago, I recognized his methodology immediately. The way you structured the findings, primary evidence first supporting documentation, cross-referenced by date conclusions, stated without editorial comment. That was your father's signature. He taught you the same way he taught me. You knew it was me. My voice came out quieter than I'd intended. From the beginning, from the very first page, nobody else audits like that anymore. Modern forensic accountants rely on software algorithms and statistical sampling. You did it the old way: manual verification, double-entry validation, paper trails followed to their source. That kind of patience is rare, distinctive. He sat in the chair across from me, bourbon glass cradled in both hands. Then why didn't you contact me? Why let me keep sending anonymous reports for 6 months? Because I needed you to build an unassailable case, not a personal vendetta. Your father would never forgive me if I let you destroy Brent emotionally, but left sterling capital vulnerable legally. So I waited. I read every report you sent. I verified every claim independently. I watched you document $800,000 in embezzlement with the kind of precision that makes termination for cause ironclad. The photo on Lawrence's desk showed my father at 32, exactly my age, when I'd quit the corner office to become someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's unpaid household manager with a CPA license gathering, dust in a drawer. Why are you telling me this now? Because the work is done. Brent is suspended pending termination. The audit trail you built gives us legal grounds to fire him without severance, without recommendation, without the golden parachute he's been assuming was his right. And because He opened a drawer, pulled out a manila envelope. "I have a proposition." He slid the envelope across the desk. "Senior financial consultant position, Sterling Capital Group. You would report directly to me, have your own audit team, full autonomy to rebuild the systems Brent corrupted. Salary exceeds what you made as CFO 12 years ago. Benefits start immediately." I stared at the envelope without touching it. "Lawrence, I haven't worked in corporate finance in over a decade. You've been sending me forensic audit reports that exposed systematic fraud my entire compliance department missed. You've been doing CFO-level work while your husband assumed you were planning dinner parties. Don't insult both of us by pretending you've lost your edge." He leaned forward. "Your father made me promise something before he died. We were 26, both newly hired at investment firms, both convinced we were going to change how finance worked. He said, 'Lawrence, if anything ever happens to me, look after my daughter. Make sure she gets every opportunity I would have given her.' He was killed 3 weeks later." My throat tightened. "I watched you become CFO at 31, youngest in the firm's history. I thought I kept my promise. Then you married Brent and I watched you disappear. Quit your job, stopped publishing in journals, became invisible. For 12 years, I thought I'd failed your father." He picked up the photo from his desk. "Then 6 months ago, an anonymous audit landed on my desk with your father's methodology written into every line. And I realized you hadn't disappeared, you'd just been waiting for a reason to remind the world what you were capable of. 12 years I'd been invisible. 12 years of someone like you only belongs at home. And here sat a man who'd recognized my father's legacy in spreadsheet margins and audit footnotes, who'd seen me when I couldn't see myself. 'This isn't charity,' Lawrence said. 'Sterling Capital needs you. We've had Brent's corruption hiding in plain sight for 7 years. You found it in 6 months while managing what I'm sure was considerable personal chaos. Imagine what you could do with actual authority and a team that answers to you.' I picked up the envelope, felt its weight. What happens if I accept Brent will know I was the anonymous accountant? He'll know I destroyed his career deliberately. He'll suspect. He won't know for certain. And frankly, Mrs. Hartley, at this point, his suspicions are the least dangerous thing about him. The incapacity policy you found this afternoon. That's the behavior of someone who doesn't just want to win, he wants to eliminate the opposition entirely. Which is why accepting this makes me more visible, more vulnerable, or more protected. Sterling Capital's legal team, HR department, security resources. Right now, you're operating alone with a lawyer and your brother's security firm. Accept this position and you have institutional support." I opened the envelope, read the offer letter. The salary line made my breath catch more than I'd made as CFO adjusted for inflation, and then some. "Your father would be incredibly proud," Lawrence said quietly. I looked at the photo one more time. My father at 23, arm around his friend's shoulders, believing the world made sense if you studied it hard enough. Maybe it did. Maybe it just took 40 years to prove it. "I will think about it," I said. Lawrence smiled. "That's all I'm asking." But we both knew I'd already decided. I left Lawrence's house at 8:30 p.m. Monday, the job offer letter still warm in my bag, and drove back to Wilmington knowing that by morning everything would accelerate. I woke Tuesday to 17 text notifications, the first one from Hayes sent at 6:47 a.m. "Video at 50,000 views, Mom. You need to see the comments." I opened the link sitting up in the hotel bed phone screen, glowing in pre-dawn darkness. Mrs. Thornton's market video had evolved. What started as her iPhone footage now included 2 additional angle security camera feeds from the Asheville City Market released to local news stations after multiple media requests. 3 perspectives of the same, 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Brent spotting Hayes near the organic produce, crossing the crowded market square, grabbing his son by the collar while shouting accusations about family betrayal. 50,000 views in 48 hours. The view count climbed while I watched 5,247, 5,312, 5,389. But the real devastation lived in the comments. Hayes had screenshotted the most significant ones and texted them individually. Jeffrey Morrison, Sterling Capital's biggest client. Completely unacceptable behavior from someone managing fiduciary responsibilities. Extremely concerned about judgment and impulse control. 2,400 likes. Jennifer March from Sterling's legal department. This is why we have HR training on professional conduct. Assault is assault even if it's your own family. 1,800 likes. Asheville Country Club board member Richard Caldwell. The club has standards. This doesn't meet them. 980 likes. I scrolled through the comments myself. Hundreds of them. Former colleagues expressing shock. Business contacts distancing themselves. Community members who'd smiled at Brent during charity galas now write paragraph-long condemnations about toxic masculinity and entitled behavior. Brent had spent his career understanding that reputation is currency. In small professional circles, he just never imagined his own behavior would be the market crash that devalued everything he'd built. Hayes called it 7:23 a.m. Mom, it's spreading beyond Asheville. Charlotte Business News picked it up. Someone tagged it corporate executive assault, and now it's in professional networks. LinkedIn is discussing it. His own industry is watching him implode. How's he responding? Radio silence. His social media went dark Monday night. Saskia deleted her Instagram entirely. But I'm getting messages from people asking if I'm okay, if I need support, if I'm pressing charges. Are you okay? I'm fine. He didn't hurt me, I made sure of that. But Mom, this is working exactly how we planned. Better, actually. I thought maybe 10,000 people would see it. Not 50,000. Not clients and board members and industry contacts. Your father spent 25 years building a reputation as controlled professional, untouchable. It took him 48 hours to destroy it by grabbing his own son on camera. Simone called at 10:47 a.m. with different news. I'm at the Buncombe County Courthouse, emergency restraining order filing. I have the video queued on my laptop, 3 camera angles, plus documentation of the ongoing marital dissolution and your concern about escalating behavior. How long until we hear back? Judge Pritchard is reviewing it now. She's known for swift decisions in clear-cut cases. This is about as clear-cut as it gets. Judge Helena Pritchard, a no-nonsense Buncombe County jurist with 20 years on the bench, had built her reputation on seeing through performance to substance. If the video showed what I knew, it showed her decision would be quick. Simone called back at 12:34 p.m. Granted, emergency restraining order effective immediately. I closed my eyes, felt something in my chest unclench. What are the terms? 100 meters minimum distance from you, Hayes or Bryn. No phone contact except through legal counsel. No social media contact. No third-party intermediary contact. Judge Pritchard watched all 3 camera angles. When your son kept his hands down while being physically assaulted by his father in front of witnesses, she asked if there were other instances of escalating behavior. I showed her the house lockout timeline, the empty vault, the suspension from Sterling Capital. She called it a pattern. What happens if he violates it? Deputies can arrest him on site. No warning required. The order is filed with the Sheriff's Department database, so any law enforcement officer who runs his information will see active restraining order status. For 25 years, Brent had used his physical presence to intimidate standing too close, during arguments blocking doorways, during fights grabbing wrists to make points, and now a judge had drawn a legal circle he couldn't cross without handcuffs. So if he approaches now, I won't step back, I said slowly. He goes straight to jail. That's not a threat, that's just geography and law enforcement. Exactly. You've just converted his primary intimidation tactic into a criminal offense. I spent the afternoon in the hotel room watching the view count climb 52,000, 55,000, 58,000. Each 1,000 views represented someone forming an opinion about Brent Hartley's judgment professionalism character. Each comment section became a public trial where his professional network served as jury. Simone called again at 4:17 p.m., but her voice carried additional weight this time. The restraining order is confirmed and served, but there's more. Lawrence wants to see you tomorrow morning. He's calling an emergency board meeting at Sterling Capital. About the video, The video reached the chairman. Apparently, several major clients have threatened to pull their accounts unless Brent is permanently removed, not suspended, terminated. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed. How many clients? 3 of the top 5. Combined assets under management of over $200 million. They're not making idle threats. They've sent formal letters through their attorneys stating they can't maintain fiduciary relationships with a firm that employs someone who commits assault on camera. This was it. Not just suspension anymore. Complete termination. The midpoint of this story where Brent's power wouldn't just crack, but shatter completely. What time tomorrow? 9 a.m. Lawrence wants you there. He's making you an official consultant so you can attend board meetings. Your first assignment, watching justice happen in a walnut-paneled conference room? The next morning at 10:30 a.m., I sat in the conference room as an official consultant. By 2:47 p.m., after the emergency session concluded, Lawrence walked back into his office, where I was waiting, and said the words I'd been architecting toward: "The board just voted. It's unanimous." Emergency session at 1 p.m. 8 senior partners, the chairman, outside counsel. We reviewed 6 months of audit documentation, confidential whistleblower with forensic expertise. Then we played all 3 angles of the market assault video. How many views now? 71,000 by the time we finished. Jeffrey Morrison submitted a formal complaint, $47 million in assets, threatening withdrawal unless we terminate immediately. 2 other major clients sent similar letters. I closed my eyes, letting the numbers settle. The vote. Unanimous. Immediate suspension pending formal termination. No severance, no grace period. No corporate courtesy for someone who commits assault on camera and embezzles from clients. 25 years. Gone in 90 minutes. The arithmetic of corporate loyalty is brutally simple when clients threaten to walk. What happens now? HR processing termination paperwork. IT deactivated his corporate email at 2:34 p.m. Security waiting at his office to escort him out. He's there now. Was there. Showed up at 3 p.m. demanding to speak with the chairman. Security informed him his key card was deactivated. Email access terminated. Company vehicle lease canceled. They escorted him to the parking garage to surrender the Mercedes. I visualized it, Brent walking through Sterling Capital's marble lobby, flanked by security, while colleagues pretended not to watch. How did he react? Tried to argue the car was part of his compensation. HR had already contacted the leasing company. The vehicle was never his. It was Sterling's assigned to his position. When the position ended, so did the car. From the corner office to being unemployed in 90 minutes. That's not revenge. That's what happens when you assault your own son on camera in front of the clients who pay your salary. His office, sealed with compliance tape. Everything inside is potential evidence for the embezzlement investigation. He won't be allowed back in. Lawrence, thank you. Don't thank me. You built a case so thorough that termination was the board's only legal option. The documentation you sent over 6 months made this bulletproof. Before I tell you what happened when security escorted him out, are you still with me? Comment A if this was justice, or B if it feels calculated. Add 1 short reason. Quick note. Some details ahead are recreated for impact, but the lesson matters most. I ended the call and sat watching afternoon traffic. 25 years of Brent's career terminated by unanimous vote. The midpoint where power didn't just shift but completely inverted. My phone buzzed. Hayes, video hit 75,000 views. Dad's LinkedIn went private. Saskia deleted all social media. Saskia. I'd been wondering when she'd recognize the sinking ship. Saskia had bet on Brent's power the way people bet on horses. She just watched her horse break its leg in front of the grandstand, live streamed to 75,000 witnesses. She let his 8th text go unanswered. By 9 p.m. Wednesday night, Brent had made 37 phone calls. Wade was monitoring, reporting each one. 3 calls to lawyers who wouldn't take his case without retainers he couldn't access. 7 calls to former colleagues who suddenly had meetings. 14 calls to Saskia, each going to voicemail with increasing frequency. And twice, Wade's surveillance confirmed Brent had driven past Harbor View Inn, circling the parking lot like he was building courage to violate the restraining order. He's desperate, Wade said. Desperate men make dangerous decisions when they've lost everything. Is he still there? Left 10 minutes ago, heading back toward Asheville. But he knows where you are now. The restraining order is just paper if he decides geography doesn't matter. Then we make sure geography matters. Call Deputy Kelly. Tell him Brent's been surveilling this location. Already done. Kelly's on alert. Says if Brent shows up again, he'll intercept before Brent gets within the prohibited distance. I looked out at Wilmington Harbor lights reflecting on dark water. The machinery was working as designed. Board termination, viral reputation destruction, restraining order with enforcement standing by. But somewhere in Asheville, a man who'd spent 25 years believing he was untouchable was discovering how quickly untouchable becomes unreachable. By Tuesday morning, that desperation would manifest in a parking lot confrontation that would prove exactly why restraining orders exist. Thursday morning, I was still at Harbor View Inn monitoring from a distance while Wade kept watch. He called at 7:42 a.m. with urgency in his voice. "He's here pulling into the motel parking lot right now." I moved to the window, staying back from the curtain. "Where's Kelly?" "Already positioned, patrol car parked at the perimeter. He's waiting to intercept." Brent's sedan, no longer the sterling capital Mercedes, rolled slowly through the parking lot entrance. I could see him scanning the vehicles looking for my rental car. His body language read desperate, determined. "How far is he from the building?" 94 meters and closing. Then Deputy Kelly stepped from his patrol car, hand moving to his service weapon, not drawing, just resting there in clear warning. His voice carried across the parking lot, amplified by morning quiet. "Mr. Hartley, stop right there. You're currently 94 meters from the building entrance. The restraining order specifies 100 meters minimum. Take one more step and I'm placing you under arrest." Brent froze. I watched through the window as his hands came up slightly automatic surrender posture. "I just need to talk to my wife for 5 minutes. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I just need to explain." "Sir, your body language and the fact you drove 4 hours from Asheville to this specific motel suggest premeditation. My body cam is recording. GPS timestamp shows you at 94 meters from a protected person under active restraining order. Turn around, get in your vehicle, and leave the premises. This is your only warning." Deputy Kelly's hand never left his weapon. Professional, measured, but absolutely serious. What happens to a man who's spent 25 years believing money solves everything when every dollar he can access has been legally frozen and every dollar he can't access has been strategically drained? Brent stood there for 17 seconds. Wade timed it before turning and walking back to his car. He didn't speed out of the parking lot, just drove slowly, deliberately, like a man processing the reality that even approaching his own wife was now a criminal act. "He's clear," Wade reported. Kelly's filing an incident report. Body cam footage shows attempted restraining order violation intercepted before completion. That's documentation if we need it later. "Where's he going now?" "Back toward Asheville. But Laurie, he's running out of options. No job, no company vehicle, frozen accounts. He's desperate." Desperate men make mistakes. That's what I'm counting on. 6 hours later, Wade called again. He just walked into the office. "What office?" "Mr. Shadow's office, downtown Asheville. The operation we set up 3 months ago." Mr. Shadow was Wade's elaborate asset drain strategy, a seemingly legitimate land broker with professional office space business cards and carefully constructed references that would check out if anyone investigated. The kind of opportunity that would appeal to someone desperate to hide remaining cash from divorce proceedings. What's he doing? Meeting about the ghost land parcels. 3 unregistered plots on the outskirts of Asheville. The pitch is 40% below market value, immediate cash purchase, no paper trail. Perfect for someone who needs to move money off the books. I closed my eyes, visualizing the trap closing. How much cash does he have left? Based on our monitoring, around $43,000 in personal reserves he's been hiding. Not enough for premium criminal defense lawyers, not enough to sustain him through extended unemployment, but enough to make him think he's being clever by converting it to undervalued real estate before divorce courts can touch it. And the land exists, technically. 3 parcels of undevelopable swampland that aren't zoned for anything except mosquito breeding. No imminent city development. No planning commission approval. Just worthless property with impressive-sounding legal descriptions and fabricated appraisal documents. Brent was drowning in legal quicksand, and Mr. Shadow had just sold him an anchor disguised as a life preserver, $43,000 worth of rope, to finish pulling himself under. Is he signing? Counting out cash right now. $100 bills. $43,000 in a manila envelope. No banks, no paper trail, exactly like the pitch promised. He thinks he's being strategic. He's actually eliminating his own legal defense fund. I heard rustling through Wade's phone muffled conversation. Transaction complete. He just walked out with 3 property deeds to land that's worth maybe $8,000 total if you could find someone stupid enough to buy it, which you can't because it's a landlocked swamp with no road access. How long until he realizes? Depends how quickly he tries to verify the development approval story. Could be days, could be weeks. By then, the Mr. Shadow office will be closed, the phone number disconnected, and the business registration dissolved. Just another opportunistic land scam happens all the time. Wade's text arrived at 3:47 p.m. His personal liquid cash is at 0. Those were the last dollars he could hide from divorce courts and use for legal defense. He just bought 3 parcels of worthless swampland that aren't zoned for anything except mosquito breeding. I sat in my motel room processing what that meant. Brent was now facing criminal embezzlement charges with viral video evidence, suspended employment. With no severance, frozen accounts, he couldn't access a restraining order that made approaching family members a criminal act, and 0 cash reserves for the kind of lawyers who could navigate that combination. He'd gone from powerful to desperate to cornered in 6 days. Which meant tomorrow's park meeting, the one he'd been begging for through legal channels, would be his last chance to negotiate from a position that wasn't complete surrender. Simone had agreed to the meeting under strict conditions: public location, exact restraining order distance, maintained her presence as legal witness, and my absolute discretion to leave at any moment. Brent thought he was getting a negotiation opportunity. He was actually getting a demonstration of how completely he'd lost control. Friday came with the park meeting looming, but the call I received at 9:47 a.m. that morning changed everything. Mrs. Hartley, this is Margaret Hartley, Brent's mother. I'd met Margaret exactly 3 times in 25 years. Brent had always kept his family at careful distance, citing unspecified conflicts that made holidays complicated. She was 78, widowed, living alone in the house her husband built in 1985. Mrs. Hartley, I need to speak with you in person today. It's urgent. Her voice carried something I hadn't heard in any of Brent's family: direct honesty without calculation. About what my son has done. About what I can give you to stop him. We met at a diner 20 miles outside Asheville, her choice, her insistence on neutral territory. I arrived first, took a corner booth, and waited. Margaret Hartley walked in at 11:15 a.m., carrying a manila envelope like it contained evidence at a trial, which I supposed it did. She slid into the booth across from me without preamble. He mortgaged my house, the house William built in 1985, put a $280,000 lien on my home without telling me. I found out when the bank manager called me as a courtesy. I kept my expression neutral. Why are you telling me this? Because I raised a son. I didn't raise a thief. She pushed the envelope across the table. Bank records, offshore account codes, transfer receipts showing $340,000 moved through Cayman routing between March and August. Documents with his actual signatures, not forged, not fabricated. His handwriting, his accounts, his theft. I opened the envelope slowly. Handwritten vault codes. Wire transfer receipts with routing numbers I recognized from my own audit work. Forged audit documents bearing Brent's signature. 8 months of work. Margaret was handing it to me in a manila envelope. Why now? Because he mortgaged my house to cover his legal expenses. Didn't ask permission. Didn't tell me until I got the bank's courtesy call. That house is all I have left of William. Brent treated it like an ATM. Watching Margaret slide that envelope across the diner table, I thought betrayal is just loyalty with a new address. What do you want in exchange? Protection of the house and immunity from whatever legal consequences come from turning over evidence against my own son. I can't promise immunity, but I know someone who might be able to arrange it. I pulled out my phone, set it to record video, and placed it on the table between us. Tell me everything, on camera. Start with how you discovered the mortgage. Margaret spoke for 14 minutes. Every detail, every date, every dollar amount. She didn't cry, didn't hesitate, just reported facts like someone who'd spent 40 years as a bookkeeper and understood that documentation was the only truth that mattered in court. When she finished, I had everything I'd spent 8 months assembling through careful forensic reconstruction, handed to me by the one person Brent never imagined would betray him. At 4:30 p.m., I walked into Lawrence Garrison's office at Sterling Capital, with Wade beside me and the manila envelope in my bag. Lawrence looked up from his desk, surprised to register when he saw me. "Mrs. Hartley, I wasn't expecting. I need to make a formal statement." He gestured to the chairs. Wade and I sat. About the anonymous audit reports you've been receiving, about 6 months of forensic documentation, about who wrote them. Lawrence leaned back in his chair, waiting. "I am the anonymous accountant. Every report you received, all 47 pages of the primary audit, every supplemental filing, every cross-referenced bank statement, I compiled them. Using my inactive CPA license and 23 years of forensic training." I pulled out my CPA credentials. License CA-087234, issued 2001, inactive status since 2013. I'm ready to sign a formal affidavit identifying myself as the whistleblower, and I have additional evidence that just became available. I slid Margaret's envelope across his desk. Lawrence opened it carefully, read the first page, then the second. His expression shifted from professional interest to focused intensity. "Where did you get this?" "Brent's mother. She contacted me this morning after discovering he'd mortgaged her house without consent. She's willing to provide sworn testimony in exchange for immunity and protection of her property. These vault codes, if they're accurate, I cross-referenced them with my own audit findings. They match." Lawrence was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents. "Mrs. Hartley, if you sign a formal affidavit claiming authorship of these audit reports, you're ending your anonymity. You become a named whistleblower in a criminal investigation. That's exposure. That's a risk." The affidavit paper felt heavier than 3 pages should. Signing my CPA license number CA-087234 felt like signing my name to a war declaration. "I understand." And this evidence from his mother changes the timeline significantly. With your audit, her testimony, these account codes, and the wire transfer documentation, we're looking at felony embezzlement with a federal wire fraud component. The DA can move to arrest within 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days. Less than a week since the morning Brent sent that text canceling our anniversary trip. Then I'll sign. I wrote my name clearly, dated it, initialed each page. Lawrence witnessed and notarized the signature, then filed everything in a folder marked with Brent's name and case number. "This is going directly to the district attorney. An arrest warrant will likely be issued by Monday morning. What happened to Margaret?" "I'll contact the DA's office about immunity arrangements. She's a cooperating witness providing material evidence. That usually qualifies for non-prosecution agreements. And the house, if she can demonstrate the mortgage was obtained through fraudulent means, she can petition to have the lien invalidated." I stood to leave. Wade followed. At the door, Lawrence called after me. "Mrs. Hartley, your father would have been proud of this. The audit work, the documentation, the precision, that's his legacy showing through." I nodded, couldn't quite speak. I walked out of Sterling Capital at 5:03 p.m., knowing I'd just lit the fuse. Arrest warrant in 72 hours. My anonymity ended. My name is now attached to every document, every accusation, every piece of evidence that would put Brent in handcuffs. Anonymous was safer. Signed was irreversible. I chose irreversible. The 72-hour countdown started Saturday morning at 6:47 a.m. when my phone rang with a number I recognized: Saskia Redmond. Saskia Redmond called, asking to meet immediately, her voice shaking in a way I'd never heard before. "I need to talk to you, alone, today, please." I should have hung up, should have let her spiral in whatever panic had seized her. But something in her voice, genuine fear, not performance, made me pause. "Where?" "Suburban coffee shop, 40 minutes north of Asheville. I'll text you the address." I arrived first, took a table in the back corner with clear sightlines to the entrance. Saskia walked in at 7:42 a.m., carrying a leather folder like she was delivering a presentation. She looked different. No carefully applied makeup, hair pulled back hastily. The confident woman who'd conspired with Brent to orchestrate my disposal had been replaced by someone who'd just realized she'd bet everything on a losing hand. She slid into the chair across from me, set the folder on the table between us. "He's going to be arrested. You know that, right? Maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, but soon." "I'm aware." "And when he's arrested, they'll investigate everyone connected to him, business associates, personal relationships, anyone who might have known about the embezzlement." I waited. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "Not about the offshore accounts, not about the scale. He told me he was protecting assets during the divorce, that you were trying to take everything, that he needed to move money temporarily until things settled. And you believed him." "I believed what I wanted to believe." She opened the folder. "But I'm not going to prison for him. These are copies of everything I could access before he changed all his passwords Friday night. Vault access codes, offshore account numbers, wire transfer confirmations, email threads showing he was moving money through shell companies I was supposed to help establish. Betrayal, I realized, is just loyalty with a forwarding address. Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you're going to win. The audit, the video his mother turning state's evidence he's finished. And I need to be on the winning side before the prosecutors start deciding who gets immunity and who gets charged as an accomplice." There it was. Not conscience, no remorse, just a cold, pragmatic calculation that she'd allied with the wrong person. "What do you want?" "Help arrange immunity, a statement to prosecutors that I didn't know the full scope, that I was manipulated, not complicit." I looked at the documents spread across the table. Account numbers that matched my audit findings, wire transfers I'd traced but couldn't fully verify, email threads that would make prosecution's case airtight. "I don't buy evidence, Saskia, but if you're willing to give sworn testimony to investigators, full disclosure, no hedging, no protecting Brent, I can have my lawyer arrange a meeting with the DA's office. They decide immunity, not me." She nodded slowly. "What happens if they say no? Then you get a very good criminal defense attorney and hope 12 years of affair with him doesn't look like 12 years of conspiracy." Her hands were shaking slightly. "I thought he was different," she said quietly. "Smarter, better than this. I never realized he was running a sinking ship." I collected the documents, slid them into my bag. "I'll call Simone. She'll contact you about scheduling testimony. Don't delete anything. Don't warn Brent. And Saskia, if you're lying, if any of this is fabricated to sabotage the prosecution case, you'll go to prison alongside him." "I'm not lying, I'm just trying to survive." I left her sitting at that coffee shop table, probably calculating whether she'd just saved herself or condemned herself. By 2:15 p.m., I was back in Lawrence Garrison's office at Sterling Capital. He looked up from his desk, surprised. "Mrs. Hartley, twice in 1 week. I have additional evidence, and I need to make the affidavit official." He gestured to the chair. I sat, pulled out Saskia's folder. "She gave you this voluntarily. She's scared. I want immunity, willing to testify." Lawrence reviewed each page with the same methodical attention he'd applied to my original audit reports. After 17 minutes, he looked up. "This closes every remaining gap in the prosecution case. With your audit, your mother-in-law's testimony, and now this from his associate, the DA can prove embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. This isn't just termination anymore. These are federal charges. How long until arrest? The warrant will be approved by Monday morning. Execution depends on the DA's schedule, but likely within 48 hours of approval. I need to sign the formal affidavit. You signed it Friday. I need to sign it again, with everything, all the evidence. My name is attached to every document, so there's no question about chain of custody. Lawrence pulled out a fresh affidavit form, typed my information into the header, printed 3 copies. This affidavit makes you the key witness. You understand that removes all anonymity. Your name will be on court documents. Brent will know. His lawyers will know. If this goes to trial, you'll testify publicly. I've been anonymous for 12 years. I'm done hiding. He slid the affidavit across his desk. I read every line, signed every page, initialed every exhibit. The notary stamp pressed into paper thunk like a gavel closing 12 years of silence. Lawrence witnessed the signature, notarized each copy, then looked at me with something that might have been respectful. Your father wouldn't be proud because you beat Brent. He'd be proud because you did it completely by the book. Every piece of evidence legally obtained. Every document is properly filed. Every step is procedurally correct. That's not revenge. That's justice. I signed my name, Laurie Hartley, CPA, license CA-087234 inactive, since 2013 active, again the moment ink dried. First time in 12 years I'd written those credentials without apologizing for not using them. Lawrence slid the affidavit into a case file marked Hartley Brent. Prosecution. The arrest warrant will be approved within 48 hours. By Tuesday morning, he'll be in custody. I walked out of Sterling Capital at 3:47 p.m., knowing the countdown had begun. 48 hours until Brent's arrest. 48 hours for him to discover what was coming. 48 hours for desperation to turn into something dangerous. Brent knocked on room 237 at the Harbor View Inn at 8:14 p.m., carrying a briefcase I knew contained $50,000 he'd stolen from his own company. I'd been expecting him for 3 hours. Simone had texted me the moment he withdrew the cash from a locked drawer in Lawrence Garrison's former office, the one they hadn't yet cleared of his personal effects. The arrest warrant would execute in 39 hours. Laurie. He stood in the doorway looking 10 years older than Sunday's market confrontation. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He set the briefcase on the dresser with exaggerated care like it contained something more valuable than desperate cash. I know things got out of hand, he said, but we had 26 years together. That has to count for something. It counted for something. I sat in the chair by the window, right up until you conspired with your assistant to have me declared mentally incompetent. His face went white. How did you? The incapacity insurance policy. State Farm keeps excellent records. I crossed my legs. You were planning to lock me in a psychiatric facility and take control of my trust fund. Was that Saskia's idea or yours? He opened the briefcase. Stacks of hundreds still banded from the bank. $50,000 cash. You drop the audit complaint, sign an NDA, and we both move on. Move on to what exactly? I'll leave Asheville. You'll never see me again. His hands shook as he touched the money. Bryn doesn't have to know the details. We told her it was mutual, that we both made mistakes. I looked at the cash, then at him. You're offering me $50,000 to pretend you didn't embezzle $800,000 from your clients and try to have your wife institutionalized. I'm offering you a way out of this that doesn't destroy everyone. He stepped closer. The arrest warrant, Laurie, I know it's coming. I need 48 hours to disappear. So you can do this to someone else in another city. So I can survive. His voice cracked. Please. Watching him realize he'd been recorded felt like watching someone discover the exit door was painted on. The adjoining door opened. Simone walked in holding her phone, red recording light still active. That's bribery, witness tampering, and conspiracy to flee prosecution. The DA will love this. Brent staggered backward. This was a setup. This was justice. Simone stopped the recording, immediately uploaded it to 3 separate cloud accounts. You've got 37 hours before the warrant executes. I suggest you spend them with a lawyer instead of your wife. He looked at me with something that might have been recognition. You've been planning this for months. 11 months. I stood. The iPad you left unlocked in April, I knew you'd gotten sloppy. I just needed to document how sloppy. Bryn will never forgive you for this. Bryn chose her side when she sent me those texts. I walked to the door, held it open. But she's about to learn what consequences feel like. He grabbed the briefcase, left the cash scattered across the dresser. I watched him stumble toward his rental car, a silver Corolla that screamed desperation, louder than the Mercedes ever had. Simone locked the deadbolt behind him. D.A. Patterson wants the recording tonight. She's adding charges. Good. I looked at the $50,000. Donate it to the Women's Shelter Foundation, anonymously. Anonymously? Simone raised an eyebrow. After you just signed an affidavit as the named whistleblower, some battles need witnesses. Some just need to be won. At 9:30 Thursday morning, Bryn was waiting for me at Magnolia Cafe. I'd agreed to meet her after she sent 17 texts, each more desperate than the last. She sat at the same corner table where Pete Dalton had offered me free breakfast 6 days ago, back when the whole town thought I was the victim. Now they knew I'd been the architect. Mom, her eyes were red, I need help. I sat down across from her. With what? Tuition. The fall semester payment is due in 2 weeks, and Dad's accounts are all frozen. Her hands twisted a napkin into shreds. $22,000. I can't lose my senior year. Did you ask your father? He's not answering my calls. She looked up. Please, I know things are complicated, but I'm your daughter. You can't just abandon me. The apron weighed 4 ounces. The lesson weighed considerably more. I pulled a folded green apron from my bag, set it on the table between us. Magnolia Cafe's logo slightly faded from industrial washing. What is this? Bryn stared at it. Your tuition plan. I smoothed the fabric. Pete Dalton needs weekend servers. $16 an hour plus tips. If you work 30 hours a week from now until December, you'll have enough for the fall semester. Her face went from confusion to horror. You want me to be a waitress. I want you to earn your education the way most students do. I stood. The way I paid for my CPA certification working double shifts at a diner in Wilmington while your father's parents paid his business school tuition in full. But I'm perfectly capable of carrying plates and remembering orders. I pushed the apron closer. Pete's expecting you at 2 p.m. for training. Don't be late. Bryn's hands shook as she picked up the apron. Saskia said you'd do this. She said you'd turn into someone cruel. Saskia's testifying against your father in exchange for immunity. I met her eyes. Ask her about cruelty. I walked out before she could respond. Through the window, I watched her sit there holding the apron, probably calling her father's disconnected phone for the 18th time. The arrest warrant would execute in 24 hours. And Brent had nowhere left to run. Simone's call came at 2:47 p.m. Thursday with 2 words I'd been architecting toward for 8 months. It's done. I stood at the window of room 237 watching rain streak the glass. The arrest warrant I'd watched count down for 48 hours had been executed 17 minutes ago at Brent's rented defense office on Merriman Avenue. Any resistance? I asked. None. Simone's voice carried the satisfaction of a chess player delivering a checkmate. Officers took him into custody at 2:30. He asked if you'd orchestrated the timing. I told him you'd orchestrated everything. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. No champagne, no dramatic courtroom scene. Just rain and a phone call and the quiet weight of 8 months lifting. What evidence did they cite? All of it. Simone rustled papers on her end. Saskia's vault codes matched the offshore accounts to the penny. The bribery recording added witness tampering and conspiracy to flee. Your 6-month forensic audit trail documented every transaction. D.A. Patterson said it's the most airtight embezzlement case she's prosecuted in 12 years. I'd built a cage 1 wire at a time. He'd walked in voluntarily. Bail hearings Monday at 9. Simone continued. DA's opposing release, flight risk witness tampering offshore accounts. Judge Helena Pritchard's presiding. Good. I watched a couple dash through the parking lot laughing as rain soaked their clothes. Thank you, Simone, for everything. Laurie. Her voice softened. You did this. I just held the camera. I hung up and sat on the bed that still smelled faintly of Brent's desperate cologne from last night's bribery attempt. The rain intensified, drumming against the window in rhythms that sounded almost like applause. What does victory sound like? 2 words on a Thursday afternoon. It's done. At 7:33 p.m., my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Asheville area code, but institutional, the kind that shows up when someone's calling from a government building or a hospital or a holding cell. This is a collect call from... The automated voice paused. Brent Hartley, an inmate at Buncombe County Detention Facility. Press 1 to accept charges. I pressed 1. Laurie. His voice had aged another decade since last night. The arrogance that had carried him through 26 years of marriage, through embezzlement, through planning, my institutionalization, gone. I was wrong about you. I said nothing. Thought you were just an ordinary housewife. He laughed, but it came out broken. Turns out you calculated every step. The iPad I left unlocked, that wasn't carelessness, was it? You manipulated me into showing you. You were already sloppy Brent. I just documented it. Saskia's evidence, Wade's freeze orders, Lawrence recognizing your forensic signature, last night's recording. He paused. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment I found that incapacity insurance policy. I kept my voice level. You were going to lock me in a psychiatric facility and steal my trust fund. Did you really think I'd just accept that? I underestimated you. You miscalculated me from day one, Brent. That was your flaw, not mine. Silence stretched between us, filled with the hollow echo of institutional phone lines and 26 years disintegrating into evidence folders. What happens now? He asked. You'll be arraigned on Monday. D.A. Patterson will present $800,000 in documented embezzlement, $50,000 in attempted bribery, witness tampering charges, conspiracy to flee prosecution. I looked at the rain still falling outside. Your mother provided the vault codes, Saskia's testimony. Lawrence submitted 12 years of anonymous audit reports with my signature on every page. You have no defense fund, no character witnesses, and no leverage. Laurie, you taught me something valuable, I interrupted. You taught me that loyalty isn't about staying. It's about knowing when someone's shown you exactly who they are and believing them the first time. I hung up before he could respond. The rain had stopped by the time Wade called at 10:15 p.m. I'd been lying in the dark, watching headlights sweep across the ceiling, thinking about arithmetic. Mr. Shadow wrapped operations this afternoon, Wade said, without preamble. Every cent of unlisted cash is gone, ghost land deals, unrecoverable investments, paper companies that don't exist. He'll spend 6 months in legal discovery trying to prove the transactions were fraudulent, but they're all technically legitimate. Just spectacularly bad investments. Nobody innocent got hurt, I asked. That was the boundary. Just his money going to the wrong graveyard. Wade's voice carried 8 months of strategic satisfaction. He'll find out tomorrow when lawyers ask for retainer he no longer has. Mr. Shadow wasn't a person, it was a graveyard I'd built one transaction at a time, waiting for the right body. How much total I asked? $43,000 from the swampland deal, another $62,000 from subsequent panic investments when he realized the first deal was worthless. Every dollar he'd hidden from asset disclosure, now buried in contracts signed with his own hand. $105,000. The exact amount he'd need for a premium criminal defense attorney. Thank you, Wade. Laurie, he paused, your father would have been proud of this operation. Surgical precision ethical boundaries maintain no collateral damage. That's Hartley methodology. I looked at the ceiling of room 237, thinking about my father teaching me forensic accounting at the kitchen table when I was 16. Balance sheets as moral documents, numbers that told the truth when people wouldn't. Justice isn't revenge, Wade. No, he agreed. Justice is arithmetic. I hung up and closed my eyes. Somewhere across town, Brent sat in a holding cell, realizing that every door he'd counted on his mother's support, Saskia's loyalty hidden cash reserves, his daughter's blind faith, had been systematically closed by someone he'd dismissed as ordinary. The rain started again, gentle this time. He'd find out the truth tomorrow morning when lawyers asked for a retainer he no longer had. Friday morning, I signed away the house I'd decorated for 25 years to women who would understand exactly why I couldn't keep it. Simone's law office smelled like fresh coffee and leather briefcases. The deed to Mountain Ridge Estate sat on her conference table between us, 4 pages of legal description, reducing 25 years of marriage to lot numbers and property boundaries. You could sell this property for $2.4 million. Simone tapped the appraisal attached to the transfer documents. You're giving it away. I'm giving it purpose. I signed the first page, my signature steadier than it had been in years. Money can't buy that back. The nonprofit representative, a woman named Rachel Pemberton, 58, director of the Women's Shelter Foundation, watched me with the kind of understanding that only comes from standing in similar wreckage. She'd lose the election for county commissioner 3 years ago after her husband's embezzlement scandal made headlines. I'd read about it in the Asheville Citizen-Times while Brent was still pretending our marriage was solid. Ms. Hartley, Rachel said carefully, we're grateful beyond measure. But I have to ask, why this specific donation? Why not just sell and start fresh somewhere else? I looked at the property photos clipped to the deed, the house where Brent had locked me out 6 days ago, the driveway where I'd stood holding my purse and phone, realizing my biometrics no longer worked, the windows Saskia had peered through watching my humiliation. Because I know exactly what it feels like to stand outside the door of a house you built and be told you don't belong inside. I signed the second page. Every woman who walks through that door will know someone understood. That's worth more than $2.4 million. Simone slid the notary acknowledgement across the table. The renovation plans include 6 bedrooms, communal kitchen counseling offices, legal aid clinic. First residents move in by October. Good. I pressed the pen against paper, feeling the weight of transformation. Brent wanted that house to be his monument. Now it'll be someone else's sanctuary. Rachel's eyes glistened. We'll name the legal clinic after you, the Hartley Justice Center. No. I shook my head. No names. Just make sure every woman who needs it gets the same forensic accounting resources I had. Teach them to read balance sheets like detective novels. Show them where husbands hide money. Revenge takes place. Justice redistributes. I chose redistribution. Simone notarized the final signature at 10:47 a.m. Mountain Ridge Estate. The house that had witnessed 26 years of marriage and 8 months of surgical dismantling no longer belonged to me. It belonged to women who would walk through those doors carrying garbage bags of belongings and leave carrying legal documents that proved they'd survived. I handed Rachel the keys, the same keys Brent had reprogrammed to lock me out. These open every door now, I said. Make sure they stay that way. At 12:30 p.m., I stood in Asheville Regional Airport, holding 2 business-class boarding passes to Paris. The tickets had cost exactly $0, paid entirely with Brent's corporate Sky Miles account, the one I'd accessed before Sterling Capital Partners terminated his credentials. Hayes Hartley, my 24-year-old son, stood beside me looking at the departure board with quiet satisfaction. He'd inherited his father's height and his grandmother's moral compass, 6'2", with the kind of steady competence that made him a brilliant young cybersecurity analyst. He'd sided with me from the first phone call, the one where I'd said, "It's time," and he'd answered, "Tell me what you need." Business class to Paris. Hayes lifted his carry-on. This is the European trip you deserved 25 years ago, Mom, and finally paid for by the right person. I smiled at the boarding passes. 3 weeks, no phones, no lawyers, just me and museums I memorized from coffee table books. Hayes had arranged everything: flights, hotels, museum reservations. The trip Brent had canceled via text message at 7:12 a.m. on what should have been our anniversary morning. The trip I'd mourned while discovering his iPad emails and realizing the cancellation had been a gift. Dad's miles expire in 60 days anyway, Hayes said. Might as well use them for something he'd hate. He'd hate this. I looked at the business class designation. He always flew business alone for conferences and booked me an economy when I came along. said it was fiscally responsible. It was controlled. Hayes checked his watch. The gate opens in 20 minutes. You want coffee? I want to sit here and absorb the fact that in 3 hours I'll be over the Atlantic Ocean heading toward the Louvre. We sat in uncomfortable airport chairs that somehow felt like victory. Through the terminal windows, I could see mountains in the distance. The same mountains I'd looked at from Mountain Ridge Estate's kitchen window for 25 years, wondering what existed beyond them. Now I'd find out. Hayes pulled an envelope from his jacket. Bryn asked me to give you this. She's working her second shift at Magnolia Cafe today. I opened it. A short note in Bryn's handwriting. Pete says I'm doing okay with orders. Tips were $47 yesterday. I'm sorry, Mom, for the texts. For choosing wrong. B. I folded the note and put it in my purse. Forgiveness would take time. But time was something I finally had. Boarding Group 1 business class passengers for Flight 4782 to Paris Charles de Gaulle. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom. The boarding pass felt like a passport to the life I'd postponed for a quarter century. Hayes stood offering his hand. I took it, his palm warm and steady, nothing like his father's calculating grip. We walked toward the security gate together, past families arguing over luggage, past businessmen, checking phones, past a woman sitting alone, holding a coffee cup with shaking hands. I almost stopped. Almost went back to tell her that whatever she was running from or running toward there were people who understood. Those houses could become shelters. Those canceled trips could be rescheduled. That arithmetic eventually balances. But Hayes squeezed my hand gently and I kept walking. Behind us, courthouse holding cell, frozen accounts, daughter learning to serve coffee. Ahead, 3 weeks in Paris using miles Brent earned but never deserved. Hayes took my hand through the security gate, and for the first time in 26 years, I didn't look back. While Hayes and I sat at our departure gate on Friday morning, my phone buzzed at 11:47 a.m. It was a text from Pete Dalton. She showed up at 6:03 a.m., fumbled with the apron strings but got it eventually, spilled nothing on her first table. She's choosing to earn her way forward. I stared at the screen, feeling the first real wave of relief. Consequences aren't cruelty when they come with a path toward redemption. How long did it take you to learn this? Her voice carried the kind of humility I'd never heard in 20 years. 19 years of Navy galley service. Pete released the tray, once her stance improved. You've got until Sunday brunch rush. She walked toward table 4 like someone crossing a tightrope. The tray wobbled but held. Pete watched her pour coffee with shaking hands, then nodded once when she returned with empty mugs. Not bad, he said. Do it again. While Hayes and I sat at our departure gate on Friday morning, my phone buzzed at 11:47 a.m. It was a text from Pete Dalton. She showed up, working hard, Pete. I stared at the message for a long time. Bryn could have ignored the apron and blamed me. Instead, she chose to earn her way forward. Pete's patience teaching her reminded me consequences aren't cruelty when they come with scaffolding. But she'd shown up at 6:03 a.m. and tied the apron. Hayes looked over my shoulder. Bryn, first shift. I showed him the text. Pete says she's trying. That's more than I expected. Me too. I put the phone away. But consequences aren't lessons if there's no path forward. Pete's giving her scaffolding, not cruelty. Hayes bought us coffee from the airport cafe, overpriced, and bitter nothing like Pete's carefully calibrated roasts. We sat watching planes taxi past the windows, each one carrying people toward destinations that had once seemed impossible. Think she'll make it through the semester? Hayes asked. If she wants it badly enough. I sipped the terrible coffee. 30 hours a week at $16 plus tips. She'll earn every credit hour. The way you paid for your CPA certification. Exactly the way. I looked at my son, 24 years old, successful, stable kind. You know what the difference is between punishment and consequence? Tell me. Punishment is something you do to someone. Consequence is something they walk into by themselves and have to walk back out of alone. I set down the coffee cup. Bryn chose those texts, chose her father's version of events. Now she's choosing whether to earn her way forward or not. That's hers to decide. Pete's patience teaching Bryn reminded me consequences aren't cruelty when they come with scaffolding. At 4:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number I recognized from Thursday night Buncombe County Detention Facility. Not a call this time. A text. "Are you satisfied now?" I looked at the message for 60 seconds, watching the cursor blink in the reply field. Hayes had gone to check on a gate change, leaving me alone with my phone and a question that deserved an honest answer. I walked to the window where evening sun slanted through terminal glass. I took a photo of myself with the departure board visible behind me. Flight 4782 to Paris, boarding 5:15 p.m., and my business class ticket held up like a diploma. I typed carefully, "I am at peace." That is different from being satisfied. Send the photo. Then I blocked the number permanently. Hayes returned with 2 fresh boarding passes, gate change to C-14, and stopped when he saw my face. "What did you just do?" "Closed a chapter." "Dad." He asked if I was satisfied. I showed Hayes the blocked contact screen. I told him I was at peace instead. Hayes studied the distinction. Like the software architect, he was parsing the difference between similar functions. "So what's the next chapter about?" I looked at the boarding pass, then at my son's face, steady present, nothing like his father's calculated expressions. "Rebuilding what I postponed for 25 years, starting with Paris museums I memorized but never saw." What's the difference between satisfied and at peace? Satisfied looks backward at what you destroyed. Peace looks forward to what you're building. We walked to gate C-14 together. The departure lounge was filled with travelers, couples holding hands, families negotiating luggage, businessmen typing urgent emails that would be forgotten by morning. I sat in an uncomfortable chair and realized I wasn't thinking about Brent's trial or Bryn's tuition or the house that was becoming a shelter. I was thinking about the Louvre's Egyptian wing, about Notre Dame's rose windows, about 3 weeks with no lawyers and no strategy and no carefully calculated next moves. "Mom." Hayes handed me a bottle of water. "You did it. The whole operation, 11 months from discovery to resolution. Dad arrested assets, preserved Bryn learning consequences, the estate becoming something good. You actually did it." "We did it." I took the water. "You Simone Wade, Mrs. Thornton. I just drew the blueprint." "You drew the blueprint, funded the operation, executed every step, and walked away with your ethics intact." Hayes sat beside me. "That's not revenge. That's architecture." The gate agent called for boarding Group 1 business class. Hayes and I stood gathered. Our carry-ons joined the line of passengers moving toward the jetway. Behind us, 8 days that had dismantled 26 years. A holding cell where Brent was learning what powerlessness felt like. A cafe where Bryn was learning what earning looked like. A house becoming a shelter. A daughter who'd sent 17 desperate texts and gotten back a green apron and a chance. Ahead, 3 weeks in Paris using miles Brent had accumulated through conferences where he'd pretended fiscal responsibility while embezzling from clients. The gate agent scanned my boarding pass. It beeped approved. Hayes and I walked down the jetway together, and I realized I'd stopped counting the days since Brent's text canceled our anniversary trip. Because the trip was happening anyway, just without him, and that made all the difference. 1 week after Brent's arrest, I stood on a Paris hotel balcony watching dusk lights flicker across the Seine. The first moment in 8 months I wasn't calculating the next move. Hayes was inside reading a museum guide. We'd spent the day at the Louvre's Egyptian wing, the one I'd memorized from coffee table books, while pretending my marriage was salvageable. The hieroglyphs had looked exactly like the photographs. But standing in front of them, feeling centuries of stone under my fingertips, that was something no book could replicate. My phone buzzed. Lawrence Garrison's name appeared on the screen. Laurie. His voice carried across 6 time zones with news I'd stopped holding my breath for. Grand jury indicted him on 7 counts. Embezzlement, witness tampering, conspiracy to defraud, 3 counts of falsifying financial records, attempted bribery. I watched a boat glide down the Seine, its lights reflecting on dark water. And Saskia's immunity deal went through yesterday. She's testifying as a state's witness in exchange for full immunity. DA Patterson says her vault codes and email threads make the case airtight. Lawrence paused. Your daughter sent what I'd call a tentative apology text. Working cafe shifts, apparently learning what earning looks like. Bryn's note from the airport came back to me, I'm sorry, Mom, for the texts, for choosing wrong. Not a complete reconciliation, but scaffolding toward one. And the consulting offer you mentioned, I asked. Lawrence's laugh was warm. Senior financial consultant position is still open, but I suspect you might have other plans by now. Perhaps. I smiled at the Parisian skyline. I need 2 more weeks here first, then we'll talk. Take 3 if you need them. Justice doesn't have an expiration date. I hung up and looked at the city spreading before me, monuments and bridges and centuries of architecture built by people who'd survived worse betrayals than mine. Hayes appeared beside me with 2 glasses of wine. Updates, he asked. 7 counts. Saskia's testimony, Bryn's apologizing. I took the wine. Everything we set in motion 8 months ago is resolving exactly as designed. Are you going to take Lawrence's consulting offer? Perhaps, but entirely on my terms. Hayes clinked his glass against mine. That's the only way you should take anything from now on. Revenge is a house you burn down while standing inside. Justice is walking out first, then changing the locks. 1 month after Brent's arrest, I stood outside a new office suite in Florida, watching a signage company mount fresh lettering on glass doors. Hartley & Company Financial Protection, Forensic Accounting, and Asset Recovery. Not Sterling Capital Partners. Not Lawrence's firm, mine. The office was modest, 3 rooms, good light walking distance to the beach. I'd chosen Florida deliberately. Not Asheville, where everyone knew the story. Not Wilmington, where Brent's family still whispered my name with pity. Somewhere new. Somewhere I could build a practice protecting people from the same exploitation Brent had perfected. Simone stood beside me, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 plastic cups. How many years to get back here? I didn't get back. I watched the installer tighten the final bolt. This is the first time. Last time I worked for someone else's company, I used credentials I apologized for having. This one is entirely mine. The letters caught afternoon sun, Hartley & Company. My father's methodology, my forensic signature, my ethics. Simone poured champagne into plastic cups. To architecture. To do arithmetic. I touched her cup. My phone buzzed 3 times in succession. Hayes, Dad taught you financial forensics. You're using it to protect people he would have exploited. That's not revenge. That's redemption. Wade, your father would have been proud. Surgical precision, ethical boundaries, no collateral damage, pure Hartley methodology. Lawrence, if you ever need referrals for complex cases, you know where to find me. Congratulations, Laurie. I looked at the messages, then at the door bearing my name. 12 years ago, I'd let my CPA license go inactive to avoid conflict with Brent's fragile ego. 12 years of apologizing for being competent. 12 years of making myself smaller so he could pretend to be larger. Now my credentials are active. My name was on the door. And I'd never apologize for either again. At sunset, I sat alone on a quiet Florida beach, watching waves pull back from shore. The office behind me was locked, security system armed business cards, ordered first client consultation scheduled for Monday morning, a woman whose husband had hidden assets in offshore accounts and tried to have her declared incompetent. I knew exactly how to find every dollar. My phone showed Brent's blocked contact had made 0 further attempts. The horizon was clear in every direction. I opened the photo from the airport lounge, Hayes returning with coffees, golden light slanting through terminal windows, my Paris boarding pass held up like a diploma. The moment I'd stopped counting days since the canceled anniversary and realized the trip was happening anyway, just without him. I set it as my permanent wallpaper. The tide pulled back. Warm Florida wind carried salt and possibility, 2 things I'd forgotten how to taste during 26 years of marriage. To a man who'd taught me forensic accounting but never understood its fundamental principle, numbers don't lie, but people do. Brent had taught me to read balance sheets like detective novels, to find hidden accounts, to trace paper trails through shell companies and falsified records. He'd made me excellent at uncovering fraud. He just never imagined I'd use those skills to uncover him. 8 months ago, I stood outside Mountain Ridge Estate, holding my purse and phone biometrics revoked, realizing my husband had locked me out of the house I'd decorated for 25 years. I'd smiled then, not from satisfaction, but from recognition. The machine I'd been building for months was finally running. Now I sat on a beach 3 states away from that driveway watching sunset paint the ocean gold. The estate was becoming a shelter. Brent was awaiting trial. Saskia had betrayed him for immunity. Bryn was learning what earning felt like. Hayes was planning another European trip for next summer. Lawrence was sending referrals. Simone was handling my divorce filing. And I was sitting on a beach with my name on an office door, my credentials active, my phone showing 0 contact attempts from a man I'd spent 8 months systematically dismantling. I closed my eyes, breathed ocean air. I felt warm sand between my toes and wind against my face and the weight of 8 months lifting like morning fog. Not satisfied, peace. And for the first time in 12 years, I finally knew the difference. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about rebuilding a life that someone else once tried to quietly dismantle is not the dramatic courtroom moments, not the frozen accounts or the viral videos or the unanimous board votes, but rather this ordinary, unhurried Tuesday morning when a woman who once apologized for her own competence can sit at a brand new desk facing a window that overlooks nothing more spectacular than a sunlit parking lot and a strip of blue sky, open a fresh client file, uncap a pen, and begin without permission, without hesitation, without apology. The quiet, meticulous, deeply satisfying work of protecting someone else from precisely the kind of erasure she survived. And to you listening to my story, remember this: revenge and justice are not the same thing. For 26 years, I made myself smaller to accommodate someone who was planning my destruction. I ignored every warning sign, the guest room, the dismissive comments, the way he stopped seeing me as an equal. My mistake wasn't discovering his betrayal too late. It was believing I needed to shrink so he could grow. Don't make that mistake. These revenge cheating stories we share aren't about destruction. They're about reclaiming what someone tried to take from you. True family stories teach us that loyalty isn't staying when someone weaponizes your trust. It's knowing when to walk away with your dignity intact. I believe God allowed me to discover that iPad for a reason, not to destroy Brent, but to save myself. Justice isn't about making someone suffer. It's about ensuring they can't harm anyone else. That's what turns revenge-cheating stories into true family stories worth telling. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have done things differently? Your perspective matters. And if you want more stories about justice, accountability, and rebuilding after betrayal, subscribe to Revenge Dad. This community is stronger when we learn from each other. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time is valuable, and I'm honored you spent it here with me. One final note: while this story contains fictionalized elements for storytelling purposes, the lessons about protecting yourself and knowing your worth are absolutely real.